Hi, Dr. Davis. My name is Patricia Mays, and for my final project, I'm going to start out by talking about milestones in infants, children, adolescents, and young adults. It's important to set a stable and healthy home life for your children throughout their entire lifespan. Even when you think your children are too young to realize what's going on at home, you're probably wrong. Infants at 2 to 3 months old are already capable of recognizing faces and recognizing people from a distance, and they also begin to act bored if activity doesn't change. In just a few years, your school-age child can often resolve conflict through peer judges who accept or reject their actions. Inner control is being formed and practiced each time decisions are being made. They acknowledge that good and bad days are defined as what is approved or disapproved of by the family. On the other hand, an adolescent is not only dealing with their own biological changes, but also completely in tune with what's going on at home. Adolescents experience dramatic physical, emotional, and social changes. This can be very confusing for them. They become abstract thinkers, and this results in them becoming argumentative, idealistic, and critical. Adolescents must feel attached to their parents, but also feel free to explore, develop, and voice their own opinions. Once they start doing this, they will have a greater emotional stability and higher self-esteem. Adults are usually developed into the person they're already going to be. As a young adult, you will experience an increase in confidence. Milestones are a lifelong process of physical, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional growth and change. Once you become an adult, I believe that the saying, "as the twig is bent, so grows the tree," comes into play. There is a developmental process through your years that formed you into the adult you are today. Your behaviors and attitude as a child will reflect on you as an adult. People who were raised in a loving environment will most likely mature into a young, loving adult with confidence and encouragement. Whereas a child who grew up in an environment with a lot of negativity will most likely come out to be a little unstable and maybe violent himself. Something else I'm going to talk about are 4 responses that occur from birth to young adulthood. The 4 responses are biological, psychological, sociocultural, and cognitive. The first is biological responses. For infants, the brain is rapidly growing along with physical growth. In children, physical growth slows down, but motor skills gradually improve. Adolescents experience a growth spurt, a brain spurt, and attain sexual maturity. For a young adult, it is a time for peak functioning, but a gradual decline in physical capacity begins. The second is psychological responses. Infants acquire a sense of self, self-recognition, and early signs of mind, such as joint attention. For a child, concrete and physical self-concept occur. This also includes psychological traits. In adolescence, they have more abstract and integrated self-concept. They adjust to sexuality and their gender role. For a young adult, identity continues to be defined, and there is an increase in confidence. The third is cognitive responses. For infants, this is a sense and motor period. Infants acquire a symbolic capacity through senses and actions. For the child, they master conservation, and logical actions occur in their head. The IQ also begins to stabilize. For adolescents, hypothetical and abstract thoughts emerge, and scientific problem solving improves. For the young adult, intellectual functioning is mostly stable, and peak expertise and creative achievement often occur. The last one is sociocultural. Infants are social beings from birth. They attach to a caregiver for 7 months, and they increase social skills with parents and peers. For children, involvement with same-sex peers increase, and close relationships form. For adolescents, peak peer involvement and conformity occur, and more emotional friendships and relationships occur. For young adults, social networks continue to expand and committed romantic relationships develop. Going back a little, I'm going to talk about the saying, "as the twig is bent, so grows the tree." This saying was originated by Alexander Pope in the 1700s. I believe this saying often refers to a person's attitude and their habits, mainly the bad habits. It basically states that a child will carry on the same bad habits and behaviors that they were taught into adulthood. Everything we learn as a child, who we are raised to be, the behaviors we inherit, and the ones we learn are acceptable will reflect who we are as adults. For example, a child who lives with hostility learns to fight, and a child who lives with encouragement learns confidence. In a school-age child's milestone, it states that a child can acknowledge that good and bad days are often defined as what is improved or disapproved of by the family. If the caregiver never disapproves of a bad behavior, the child can't draw the line between right and wrong, so they can't differentiate the difference between wrong behavior and right behavior. Albert Bandura also believes that humans are cognitive beings whose active processing of information plays a crucial role in their learning, behavioral, and development. Bandura believes that children observe behavior of other people and imitate what they see. I would have to say that I agree with Bandura's theories. I recently wrote a paper on Jonathan Garcia Landel, who was a guy who stabbed a guy and was arrested. I believe that people like Garcia who have no mental illness act the way they do because their life as an adult is based on the environment and experiences as a child. It's not normal for someone to get in an argument with someone and decide that it's okay to stab another person. This is a learned behavior taught at a very young age. Bandura used an experiment with an inflatable Bobo doll. He had nursery school children watch the film in which an adult model attacked the Bobo doll. Some children saw him praised, some saw him punished, and others saw no consequences at all. Apparently, even through a process termed latent behavior, in which learning occurs but is not evident in behavior, children can learn from observation. Even though they do not imitate the learned responses, whether they will perform what they learn depends partly on vigorous reinforcement, which is a process which learners become more and less likely to perform a behavior based on whether consequences experienced by the model they observed are reinforcing or punishing. Another theory I partially agree with is Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that challenged, prevailing notions of human nature and human development are driven by motives and emotional conflicts of which they are largely unaware of, and that they are shaped by their earliest experiences in the family. Freud viewed the newborn as an inherently selfish creature driven by instincts or inborn biological forces that motivate behavior. Freud strongly believed in unconscious motivation, the power of instincts and other inner forces to influence our behavior without our awareness. A pre-adolescent girl, for instance, may not realize that she is acting in babyish ways to gain the security of her mother's love. A teenage boy may not realize that his devotion to bodybuilding is a way of channeling his sexual and aggressive urges. You can see that Freud's theory emphasizes the nature side of the nature-nurture issue. Freud believes that an adolescent who tends to act out in a negative way tends to be dealing with all the biological changes happening. For instance, Joe, who was a child with no history of misbehaving or had any kind of signs of violence or issues in school, spent his entire summer isolated in his room playing violent video games. On the first day of school, Joe punched a little boy in the face. Freud believes that this is based on all of his biological changes and nothing to do with the violent video games that he played all summer long. Freud believes that Joe is facing a lot of biological changes, including puberty, and that this is Joe's defense mechanism to all the biological changes and confusion into his role into adulthood. The last developmentalist that I tend to agree with is Watson. Although Watson rejected the psychoanalytical theory, his theory relates a lot to Bandura's and Freud's. Watson believed that children have no inborn tendencies, and how they turn out depends entirely on the environment that they grew up in, and the ways in which their parents and other significant people in their life treat them. Watson used classic conditioning to prove his point. Classic conditioning is simply a form of learning in which a stimulus that initially had no effect on the individual comes to elicit a response through its association with a stimulus that already elicited the response. Watson took a white rat and presented it to an infant, who seemed to have no fear of it in the beginning. Watson then started presenting the white rat to the infant and then slipping behind the infant and banging a steel rod and making a loud noise, which then scared the infant. Then Watson ended up presenting the white rat to the infant without the banging noise, and the infant still whimpered and cried because the infant associated the white rat with the loud noise. The infant didn't fear the white rat in the beginning, but because of the loud noise that came along with the white rat, it then became scared of the white rat. He proved that emotional responses can be learned. Fortunately, fears learned through classic conditioning can be unlearned if the feared stimulus is paired with an unconditional stimulus for happy emotions. I think that I agree a lot with Watson and Bandura's theories. I believe that adults are a lot like adults are who they are because of their childhood and how they were raised. And if they were raised with a lot of love and encouragement, they grow up to be stable and loving people. And if someone is raised in an environment where all they see is negativity and violence, and they grow up to be like Garcia Landel, who ends up stabbing a guy because he doesn't know how to handle his anger. I think people are taught these things as a child. I've definitely learned a lot in this class, and it has been a pleasure, Dr. Davis. Thank you.